Imagine waking up with a tightness in your chest, an unexplainable fear that something's going to go wrong today. You leave home tense. On the highway, someone cuts you off. You curse, speed up angry. At work, your boss calls you in, that meeting you were dreading. In the afternoon, an argument with someone you love. At night, alone, you think, why does everything go wrong for me? Now answer me something. How many times in the last 30 days have you had a day that started bad and ended worse? If the answer is more than 3 times, you need to understand what I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes, because it's not bad luck, it's not coincidence, and it's definitely not the universe punishing you. It's something much more scientific and much more dangerous. You're trapped in a vibrational prison, and every negative emotion you feel is a bar that you yourself build around you. Welcome to the Quantum Carriage. Today we're going to unveil one of the most cruel and, at the same time, most liberating mechanisms of human existence, the vibrational spiral. I'm here with minds that have dedicated their lives to understanding the human psyche and our relationship with reality. And what they all discovered, each in their own way, is that there's an invisible force constantly acting, your emotional frequency. But before we explore the solutions, we need to understand the trap. Let's start with a provocation that Carl Jung made almost a century ago. What does Carl Jung say about this? People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But what they don't understand is that what you resist persists. When you wake up with fear and try to suppress that fear, what are you doing? You're feeding the shadow. You're telling your unconscious, this is so dangerous I can't even look at it. And what happens? The fear grows, multiplies, and it begins to contaminate every decision you make that day. You don't crash your car because the universe decided to punish you. You crash your car because your attention is divided between driving and running from the internal dragon you awakened in the morning. And now, let's hear what Alan Watts has to tell us about this dynamic. See the cosmic irony in this. The more you try not to feel something, the more you are feeling it. Because resistance is, in itself, a form of concentrated attention. It's like trying not to think about a pink elephant. What happens? You think about the pink elephant, but the question is deeper. In the East, there's a principle called Wu Wei, effortless action. It's the understanding that life flows when you allow, not when you force. When you wake up with sadness and say, I can't be sad, I need to be productive, you're waging an internal war. And every war has casualties. In this case, the casualties are your mental clarity, your patience, your ability to respond to the world with wisdom instead of reacting with fear. Now, let's connect the psychological with the quantum. Because what Jung and Watts described philosophically has an explanation in the physics of consciousness. Every emotion you feel emits a frequency. It's not a metaphor. It's literal. Your heart, when you feel fear, beats in a chaotic pattern. That chaotic pattern emits a measurable electromagnetic field that extends up to 3 meters around you. When you're in this frequency, 3 things happen. First, your brain enters survival mode. The amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex. You become less intelligent, less creative, less able to see solutions. Second, your perception narrows. You literally start looking for confirmation of your fear. Your brain filters reality through the lens of threat. It's what neuroscientists call negative confirmation bias. Third, and here's the quantum part, you begin to collapse quantum possibilities aligned with your emotional frequency. The field of probabilities around you reorganizes, not because the universe is magical, but because you are an energy system interacting with other energy systems. When you vibrate in fear, you become a magnet for situations that confirm the fear, not because the universe wants to punish you, but because you're tuned to that frequency. And here comes personal responsibility. Let's hear Jordan Peterson about this. Look, I know it sounds harsh, but it's necessary to hear this. You are an accomplice to your own prison. I'm not saying you're to blame for the bad things that happen. The world is chaotic, unfair, brutal. But I'm saying there's a difference between reacting to chaos and feeding chaos. When you wake up irritated and unloaded in traffic, at work, at home, you're not just having a bad day. You're building a bad day, brick by brick, interaction by interaction. And the tragedy is that this accumulates. A bad day becomes a bad week becomes a bad month, and suddenly you look at your life and think, how did I get here? You got here because you didn't take responsibility for your emotional frequency. And now you're paying the price. Let's be surgical now. Not every negative emotion works the same way. There are 4 major prison frequencies that, when they become chronic, literally close the doors to the reality you desire. Fear, anger, sadness, and resentment. Each has a specific vibrational signature, and each creates a different type of reality around you. I'll start with fear, because it's the root of almost all other destructive emotions. And for that, let's hear Carl Jung. Fear is the emotion of contraction. When you feel fear, your entire body contracts, your muscles tense, your breathing becomes shallow, your energy field literally retracts. In the psyche, fear does something even more insidious. It activates what I call complexes. They're autonomous structures in the mind that, once activated, begin to operate as if they had a life of their own. When you're in the complex, you attract exactly what you fear. Because you're projecting that fear into every interaction. You're seeing rejection where it doesn't exist. You're creating rejection through your own defensive energy. Alan Watts helps us understand the cosmic dance that forms. Fear creates contraction. Contraction creates isolation. Isolation confirms the fear. And the cycle perpetuates. But fear is, fundamentally, an identification problem. You only fear when you believe you are something separate, something that can be destroyed. When you identify with the ego, you live in constant fear because all these things can be lost. But you cannot lose what you really are. You are consciousness observing all of this, and consciousness cannot be hurt. Now let's talk about anger. Jordan Peterson reminds us that anger is not intrinsically bad. Anger is energy. It's the energy that says, this isn't right, this needs to change. The problem is when anger becomes chronic, because chronic anger is biologically destructive. Your body enters a constant, inflammatory state. But what interests me most is what anger does to your relationships. Anger is an emotion of attack, and when you're in this state, you're constantly looking for someone to attack, someone to blame. People start to avoid you, and you interpret this as further confirmation that the world is against me. But the world isn't against you. You're against the world. And here's the physics of it. Anger vibrates at a chaotic and expansive frequency. When you're angry, your electromagnetic field becomes erratic. And this affects everyone around you. People feel your anger before you even open your mouth. You're magnetizing situations that confirm that people are unfair, that the world is hostile, because anger attracts anger. It's a law as reliable as gravity. Now, sadness is different. Carl Rogers explains that sadness is not expansive like anger, nor contractive like fear. Sadness is heavy. It's the emotion of emotional gravity. When you're sad, everything weighs. And chronic sadness becomes resignation. You start to believe that this is just how it is, that things will never change. You stop trying, stop seeking, stop believing. And the universe, which responds to your vibration, interprets this as, okay, he doesn't want change. I'll keep everything as it is. It's not punishment, it's tuning. And now we arrive at the most dangerous of all, resentment. Jordan Peterson will explain to us. Resentment is anger you don't express. It's anger you swallow, that you ruminate, that you feed in silence. And it's absolutely toxic. Nietzsche had a devastating phrase: resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You keep chewing on grudges, rehearsing arguments in your head, remembering injustices, and all the while, you're poisoning yourself, because resentment vibrates at a frequency of victimization, and victimization attracts more situations where you feel like a victim. These four emotions, fear, anger, sadness, and resentment, are not just emotions. They're frequencies you transmit 24 hours a day when they become chronic. Fear attracts danger and rejection. Anger attracts conflict and hostility. Sadness attracts stagnation and loss. Resentment attracts betrayal and injustice, not because the universe is cruel, but because you're tuned to that station. Now, before we move forward to the solution, I need to make you an invitation. If you've made it this far, you've already realized this isn't just another motivational video. This is an awakening process, and awakening is an act of courage, because it means looking in the mirror and recognizing, I have a part in this. I created part of this prison. But if you're here, it's because something in you knows there's a way out. And I want you to understand something fundamental. You're not watching this by chance. Nothing is by chance. You were drawn to this information because your consciousness is ready to expand. And when you expand, you don't just free yourself. You become a beacon for others who are still in darkness. So I invite you, don't just watch, absorb, practice, transform, because information without application is just entertainment. And you didn't come here to be entertained, you came here to be freed. In the next few minutes, we're going to show you exactly how to do that. Stay with me. Now that you understand the four emotions that lock your reality, let's dive into an even deeper territory: how these emotions operate in your daily life without you noticing. Because the vibrational prison isn't something abstract. It happens in small decisions, in automatic reactions, in invisible patterns you repeat every day. Let me tell you a story. It's not fiction. It's a compilation of real cases I've seen happen dozens of times. Let's call our character Anna. Anna is 35 years old. She's been working at a company for 8 years. She's competent, dedicated, but has never been promoted. She wakes up every morning at 6 o'clock. Before she even fully opens her eyes, the first thought that crosses her mind is, another day. It's not a neutral thought. It has weight, resignation, anticipated exhaustion. She grabs her phone, still in bed, and the first thing she sees are work messages. Her stomach tightens. She already knows the day is going to be heavy. She gets up, showers, gets dressed. In the mirror, she looks at herself and thinks, I'm getting old. I'm tired. On the way to work, traffic is jammed. She sighs deeply and thinks, it's always like this. Nothing works in this city. She turns on the radio. Bad news, violence, corruption, economic crisis. She turns it off, irritated, and thinks, the world is lost. When she arrives at the company, she greets her colleagues, but her smile is automatic, empty. She sits at her desk, opens her computer, and starts working. Mid-morning, her boss passes by and makes a neutral comment about a report. She interprets it as criticism. She spends the rest of the morning ruminating, he thinks I'm not good enough. Maybe I should have done it differently. At lunch, she sits alone. Not because no one invited her, but because she assumes no one wants her company. She eats distracted, looking at her phone, scrolling through social media, seeing apparently perfect lives of other people. She thinks, why is their life so easy and mine so difficult? In the afternoon, a colleague gets promoted. She congratulates him, but inside she feels a pang of envy and resentment. She thinks, I work just as hard as he does. Why am I never recognized? At the end of the day, she goes home exhausted. Not physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted. She arrives home, turns on the TV, eats something quick, scrolls through her phone for another hour, and goes to sleep. In the dark, before falling asleep, she thinks, tomorrow will be the same thing. And it is. Tomorrow is the same thing. And the day after. And the next month. And the next year. Now, tell me, what did Anna do wrong? At first glance, nothing. She woke up, worked, went home. But let's apply what we learned in the first chapter. Anna woke up in resignation, chronic sadness. She spent the entire day filtering reality through this emotion. Every interaction, every thought, every decision was contaminated by this frequency. And what did she attract? More of the same. More stagnation, more invisibility, more confirmation that life is hard and unfair. Let's hear Carl Jung about this. What Anna doesn't realize is that she's operating from a victim archetype. She doesn't see herself as a victim consciously, but unconsciously, she built an identity based on being ignored, on not being valued, on suffering in silence. And this archetype attracts, magnetically, situations that confirm this identity. When her boss made a neutral comment, she could have interpreted it in 10 different ways. But she chose, unconsciously, the interpretation that confirms her belief that she's not good enough. This isn't paranoia. It's the complex operating. It's the shadow creating the reality she fears. And now, Alan Watts brings us a liberating perspective. Anna is not a victim of the world. Anna is a victim of her own identification. She believes she's a tired person, invisible, not valued. And when you believe you are something, you act accordingly. You emit energy signals accordingly. When she sits alone at lunch, she's transmitting, "Don't include me." When she interprets the boss's comment as criticism, she's transmitting, "I'm not good enough." And the people around, unconsciously, pick up these signals and respond accordingly. Not because they're bad, but because we're all energy systems interacting with each other. Now let's dissect another pattern. Let's call this one Marcus. Marcus is 42 years old. He's an entrepreneur. He works 16 hours a day. He wakes up at 5 in the morning, already checking emails. He has a frenetic, agitated energy. In meetings, he interrupts people. He's always in a hurry, always irritated, always feeling things don't happen fast enough. When an employee makes a mistake, he explodes. Then he apologizes, but the next day, it happens again. Marcus is always fighting, with suppliers, with clients, with his wife, with his kids. He doesn't realize it, but he wakes up looking for something to fix, something to attack, something to dominate. And he always finds it. Because when you're in this frequency, you attract conflict. The world organizes itself to give you what you're vibrating. A supplier delays a delivery, a client complains, an employee makes a mistake, and Marcus thinks, "See, I can't trust anyone. I need to do everything myself." And the more he thinks like this, the more reality confirms it. The people around start to fear him. They start to hide mistakes. They start to avoid bringing him into decisions. And he interprets this as incompetence. But in reality, it's his energy that's creating this environment. Jordan Peterson will help us understand Marcus's responsibility. Marcus believes his anger is justified, that he's just reacting to an incompetent and lazy world. But here's the hard truth. Marcus isn't reacting to the world. Marcus is creating the world around him. Because chronic anger isn't response, it's a transmitter. It's a frequency you constantly transmit that magnetizes situations of conflict. If Marcus woke up with gratitude instead of tension, if he approached mistakes with curiosity instead of attack, if he breathed before exploding, the world around him would change. Not because people would magically change, but because he'd be collapsing different quantum possibilities. He'd be tuned to a different frequency. Now let's go to the third example. Let's call her Julia. Julia is 28 years old. She's been in a relationship for 3 years. She loves her partner, but she lives in fear. Fear of being cheated on. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of not being enough. She checks his phone when he's in the shower. She questions him when he takes too long to respond to messages. She gets tense when he talks about coworkers. She doesn't do this because she wants to. She does it because the fear is so great she can't control it. And what happens? The partner starts to feel suffocated. He starts to create emotional distance, not because he stopped loving her, but because her energy is constantly questioning, monitoring, controlling. And the more he distances himself, the more certain she is that he's going to leave. And the more certain she is, the more she clings, the more she controls. And the cycle closes, until one day he really leaves, not because he wanted to, but because the relationship became unbearable, and Julia thinks, see, I knew he was going to leave me. But she doesn't realize it was her fear of being left that created exactly what she feared. Carl Rogers brings us compassion here. Julia isn't bad. Julia is wounded. She was probably abandoned in the past. Maybe in childhood, maybe in a previous relationship. And that wound was never healed. So she carries this pattern to the next relationship, and to the next, and to the next. And each time, the same story repeats. Not because she attracts bad men, but because she attracts the confirmation of her deepest wound. Until she stops, looks inside, and heals the wound. Only then will the pattern be broken. Now let's talk about the mechanism behind this. Carl Jung calls this projection. You project onto the external world what hasn't been resolved in the internal world. Anna projects her belief of invisibility. Marcus projects his internal anger. Julia projects her fear of abandonment. And the world, like a perfect mirror, reflects it back. Not because the world is magical, but because you're constantly emitting energy signals that influence how people respond to you, how you interpret situations, which opportunities you see or fail to see. Alan Watts reminds us that the universe isn't doing this to you. You're doing this to yourself. And that's both the bad news and the good news. The bad news is you're responsible. The good news is that if you're responsible, you have the power to change. But how? How do you break this pattern? How do you stop being Anna, Marcus, or Julia? And here's the first practical exercise I promised. It's simple, but don't underestimate simplicity. Some of the most powerful tools are simple. I'll call this the conscious interruption technique. It works like this. For the next 7 days, you're going to do the following. Every time you feel an intense negative emotion, fear, anger, sadness, resentment, you're going to stop for 10 seconds. Literally, stop. And you're going to ask yourself 3 questions. First question, what am I feeling right now? Name the emotion. Don't judge, just name. I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling sadness. Second question, where in my body am I feeling this? Scan your body. Is the fear in your chest? Is the anger in your throat? Is the sadness in your stomach? Locate it. Third question, is this emotion helping me right now? Don't ask if it's justified. Ask if it's helping you. If the answer is no, take a deep breath 3 times, exhaling slowly, and choose a different action. Don't try to suppress the emotion. Just recognize it's there, thank the message it's trying to give you, and choose not to act from it. This seems too simple to work, I know. But Jordan, Peterson teaches us that transformation doesn't happen in big leaps. It happens in small daily adjustments. If Anna did this every morning when waking up, if Marcus did this before exploding in a meeting, if Julia did this before checking her partner's phone, their lives would change radically in weeks. Not because the technique is magical, but because it interrupts the automatic pattern. And when you interrupt the pattern, you create a space between stimulus and response. And in that, space is your freedom. Practice this for the next 7 days. Every time you feel a strong negative emotion, stop, name, locate, question, breathe, choose. You'll notice that for the first time in a long time, you're not being controlled by emotions. You're observing emotions. And when you observe, you're no longer a prisoner. You're a witness. and the witness is free. But this is just the beginning, because there's an even more powerful exercise I'm going to teach you at the end of this video. An exercise that doesn't just interrupt the pattern, but reprograms your vibrational frequency at the deepest level. It's a protocol that combines neuroscience, quantum physics, and ancestral wisdom. And if you apply it correctly, you'll feel the change not in weeks, but in days. Stay with me until the end, because this exercise might be the game changer you've been waiting for. Now that you understand the diagnosis and have begun interrupting automatic patterns, let's dive into the science behind transformation. Because it's not enough to know you're trapped, you need to understand exactly how the prison was built so you can dismantle it brick by brick. Let's start with a truth few tell you. You're not a solid body, you're energy. 99.9% of the atom is empty space. If you took all the atoms in your body and removed the empty space between them, you'd fit on the head of a pin. So what you call you is, in fact, a field of energy vibrating at a specific frequency. And this frequency changes constantly according to your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs. When you feel fear, the frequency of your field drops. Literally, it can be measured. When you feel love, gratitude, joy, the frequency rises. And here's what quantum physics discovered. Frequencies attract resonant frequencies. It's the same principle as two tuning forks. If you strike a tuning fork tuned to C and place it near another tuning fork also tuned to C, the second one starts vibrating on its own, without you touching it. This is called resonance. And you're doing this all the time with the reality around you. Let's hear what Alan Watts has to say about this. The universe isn't a dead machine operating by mechanical laws. The universe is a living, dancing, interconnected organism. And you're not separate from it. You're a wave in the ocean, a temporary expression of the whole. When you vibrate in fear, you're sending waves of fear through this ocean. And the ocean responds with similar waves back. Not because the ocean hates you, but because that's the nature of resonance. You can't vibrate in C and expect to receive F. The universe doesn't work that way. But here's the revolutionary part. If you can create frequencies of fear, anger, sadness, and resentment, you can also create frequencies of love, gratitude, joy, and abundance. You're not stuck in one frequency. You are the tuner. You can change stations at any time. But how? How do you change stations when you've spent years, maybe decades, tuned to the same negative frequency? Carl Jung gives us the first clue. You need to bring the unconscious to consciousness. Because most of your vibrational frequency isn't being determined by your conscious thoughts. It's being determined by unconscious programs running in the background. Programs installed in childhood. Programs of I'm not good enough, I don't deserve to be loved, the world is dangerous, people will betray me. These programs operate 24 hours a day, emitting frequencies that attract exactly what you don't want. Until you bring them into the light of consciousness, until you see them, recognize them, and choose to uninstall them. Jordan Peterson adds the dimension of responsibility here. You can't change what you don't admit. If you continue blaming the world, blaming people, blaming luck, you're abdicating power. Because when you blame the external, you're saying, I have no control. And when you say that, you really don't have any. But when you take responsibility, when you say, I participated in creating this, so I can participate in transforming this, you recover power. And with power comes the ability to retune. But let's be practical now. How do you retune? There are three fundamental pillars. The first pillar is awareness. The second is repetition. The third is elevated emotion. Let's dissect each one. First pillar, awareness. You can't change what you don't see. That's why the exercise I gave you in the previous chapter is so important. Stop, name, locate, question. This creates awareness. You stop operating on automatic and start observing. And when you observe, you create a space between stimulus and response. In that space is the key to freedom, because on automatic, you're a prisoner. But in observation, you're free to choose. Second pillar, repetition. Once isn't enough. 10 times isn't enough. You spent years reinforcing negative patterns. So you need repetition to install new patterns. The brain works by neuroplasticity. Neurons that fire together, wire together. If you spent years firing the fear neuron together with the I'm not enough neuron, they're connected. Every time you feel fear, the thought of insufficiency automatically comes. But you can disconnect this, and you can connect fear with curiosity, with breathing, with conscious choice. But it needs repetition. Daily, consistent, non-negotiable. Third pillar, elevated emotion. And here's the secret few. Understand. Positive thinking alone doesn't change anything. Mechanically repeated affirmations don't change anything. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you think. The universe responds to what you feel. You can repeat 1,000 times I am abundant, but if deep in your chest you feel scarcity, it's scarcity you're vibrating. It's scarcity you'll attract. So the key isn't just thinking differently, it's feeling differently. And feeling differently requires intentional practice. Carl Rogers brings us an important perspective here. You can't force an elevated emotion. Can't fake it. The body knows. The energy field knows. So you need to find genuine doors to elevated emotions. Gratitude is the most accessible door. Because always, there's something to be grateful for. Even in the darkest moments, you're alive. You're breathing. You have access to this knowledge. Start there. And when you enter the frequency of genuine gratitude, not intellectual gratitude, but gratitude felt in the chest, you change your frequency instantly. And when you change your frequency, you change what you attract. Now let's talk about coherence. There's an institute in the United States called HeartMath that has been studying this for decades. They discovered that when your heart is in coherence, when the heart rhythm is harmonious, your brain enters a state of high performance. You become more creative, more intelligent, more resilient, and your electromagnetic field expands and harmonizes. And in this state, you literally start attracting synchronicities. The right people appear, opportunities arise, solutions reveal themselves. Not because the universe is rewarding you, but because you're tuned to a frequency where these possibilities exist. Alan Watts reminds us that this isn't magic, it's physics. Radio waves have always been in the air, but you can only capture them when you tune the radio to the right frequency. The opportunities, the people, the solutions have always been in the quantum field of possibilities, but you couldn't see them because you were tuned to the wrong frequency. Now you're learning to retune, and when you retune, what seemed impossible becomes natural. But there's an obstacle that needs to be addressed, and this obstacle is attachment to the old identity. Carl Jung called this the death of the ego. You built an identity based on your wounds, your limitations, your stories of suffering. And this identity, as painful as it is familiar. It's safe because you know who you are when you're in it. But to retune, you need to let this identity die. And that's scary because you don't know who you'll be on the other side. But I tell you, on the other side is the version of you that you always knew was possible. The free version, the powerful version, the version aligned with your essence. Jordan Peterson teaches us that this death is necessary, just as the caterpillar needs to die for the butterfly to be born. You can't carry the old identity to the new reality. It doesn't work. So you need to have the courage to let go. Let go of the story that you're a victim. Let go of the story that you're not capable. Let go of the story that the world is against you. These stories only serve to keep you trapped. And you didn't come this far to remain trapped. Now let's talk about the morphogenetic field. Rupert Sheldrake, a British biologist, proposed that there's an invisible field of information that connects everything. When you change, you don't just change for yourself, you change the field. And when you change the field, you make it easier for others to change too. That's why when one person in a family heals, the entire family dynamic changes. That's why when a leader in a company transforms, the entire organizational culture transforms. Because we're not islands, we're nodes in an interconnected network. And when you elevate your frequency, you pull everyone around you upward. So I want you to understand something fundamental. This work you're doing isn't just for you. It's for everyone around you. It's for your children, who will grow up seeing an example of someone who broke patterns. It's for your parents, who may never have had this opportunity. It's for your colleagues, your friends, your community. Because transformation is contagious. Elevated frequencies are contagious. When you free yourself, you become a portal of liberation for others. And that's the true contribution you can give to the world. Not money, not status, not recognition, but frequency. Because elevated frequency heals. Elevated frequency inspires. Elevated frequency transforms. So I invite you again, don't do this halfway. Don't watch, like, and forget. Because if you do that, you'll be one more who knew but didn't apply. And knowing without applying is more painful than never having known. Because you'll carry the weight of having had the key and not using it. So use it. Practice, transform, and when you transform, share. Not in an arrogant way, but in a genuine way. Because the world needs more people operating at elevated frequencies. The world needs more people who chose to leave the prison. And you can be one of them. You already are one, just by being here. In the next few minutes, we'll move to deep, practical application. We'll see real cases of people who applied these principles and completely transformed their realities. And at the end, I'm going to give you the complete protocol, the killer exercise I promised. An exercise that will integrate everything you've learned so far and give you a tool to use every day, every time you feel you're falling back into the old frequency. Stay with me. The best is yet to come. Now let's leave theory and enter the territory of real application. Because you can have all the information in the world, but if you don't see it working in practice, in real lives, it's hard to believe it's possible for you. So I'm going to tell you 3 cases. They're not fiction. They're real people who applied exactly what we're discussing here. I'll change the names for privacy reasons, but the details are accurate. First case, Robert. Robert was 47 years old when he came to me. He was on the verge of divorce. His business was failing, and he had developed hypertension and chronic insomnia. He was, literally, a man on the edge of collapse. When we talked for the first time, he said something I'll never forget. I wake up every day feeling like I'm drowning, and there's no water. It's just the feeling that I can't breathe. I asked, "When was the last time you woke up in peace?" He was silent for almost a minute. Then he said, "I don't remember. Maybe when I was 20. 27 years living in constant tension. 27 years vibrating in fear, anger, and exhaustion. And the universe delivered exactly what he was vibrating. Crisis in every area." Let's hear Carl Jung about what was happening with Robert. He was completely identified with his external roles: husband, father, businessman. And when these roles started to crumble, he panicked. Because if he's no longer the successful provider, who is he? This is the terror of the ego. Identity built on external functions is fragile, because everything external can be taken away. The company can fail, the marriage can end, health can deteriorate. But the self, the essence, that can't be touched. The problem is Robert had no contact with the self. He had gotten lost in the roles, and now he was paying the price. So we started the work. The first thing I asked Robert to do was stop. Literally stop. He had been running for 27 years, trying to fix things, control things, force things. And the more he ran, the more things crumbled, because he was operating from a frequency of desperation, and desperation attracts more desperate situations. So I said, Robert, for the next 30 days, you're going to do one thing. Every day in the morning, before grabbing your phone, before thinking about problems, you're going to sit in silence for 20 minutes. And you're going to do an exercise. You're going to connect with gratitude, but not intellectual gratitude, visceral gratitude. You're going to remember moments in your life where you felt loved, safe, happy. You're going to relive those moments until you feel the emotion in your chest. And you're going to stay in this frequency for 20 minutes. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, my life is crumbling and you want me to sit thinking about good things? I said, exactly. Because as long as you're vibrating in panic, you're going to keep attracting collapse. You need to change the frequency first. Then the external reality can start to change. He didn't believe it much, but he agreed to try. He was a desperate man, and desperate men do things they would never do. In the first few days, it was torture for him. He would sit, close his eyes, and within seconds, his mind would race with problems, bills, worries. But I instructed him, every time the mind races, gently bring it back to gratitude. Don't force it. Don't fight the mind. Just redirect, like training a dog, patiently, persistently, and he did it, religiously. 20 minutes, every day, for 30 days. What does Alan Watts teach us about this? You can't control the mind by force. The mind is like water. The more you try to hold it, the more it escapes. But you can redirect the flow, gently, consistently, and gradually, new channels are formed, new neural patterns are created, and what once seemed impossible becomes natural. Robert was creating new channels, channels of peace, channels of gratitude, channels of trust. After 2 weeks, he called me. He said, something strange is happening. I still have the same problems, but I'm not feeling the same weight. It's like I can breathe again. I said, that's the frequency changing. Continue. He continued. In the 3rd week, he called me again. He said, yesterday I had a conversation with my wife, and for the first time in months, I wasn't defensive. I really listened to what she had to say, and she cried and hugged me and said she felt that the Robert she knew came back. In the 4th week, he received an unexpected proposal from an investor interested in saving the company, something he wasn't even looking for. It just appeared. Jordan Peterson would say, Robert took responsibility. He stopped blaming the market, his wife, luck. He looked inside and said, I need to change something in me. And when you take that responsibility, when you stop being a victim and become the protagonist, the universe responds. Because now you're in the driver's seat. Now you're emitting a frequency of power, not powerlessness. 6 months later, Robert's marriage was rebuilt. The company not only survived, but prospered, and he was sleeping well for the first time in years. Not because problems magically disappeared, but because he changed the frequency from which he operated. And from an elevated frequency, problems are just challenges, not existential threats. Second case, Camila. Camila was 31 years old. She was a doctor, intelligent, competent, dedicated, but she was stuck in a devastating pattern: toxic relationships. Every man she attracted was emotionally unavailable. She would fall in love, give herself completely, and then be discarded. And this happened repeatedly. 3 relationships, same pattern. When she came to me, she said, I think I have a magnet for wrong men. I said, no, you have a magnet for an unresolved internal pattern. And as long as you don't resolve this, you'll keep attracting the same experience with different faces. Carl Rogers would help us understand Camila with compassion. She wasn't consciously choosing unavailable men. She was being guided by a childhood wound. Her father was emotionally distant. She spent her entire childhood trying to win his attention and love, and she never got it. That wound, unhealed, became an unconscious pattern. Now, as an adult, she felt attracted to men who replicated her father's dynamic, emotionally distant, hard to win over, impossible to hold. Because unconsciously, she was trying to heal the original wound, trying to finally win her father's love through these substitutes. But it doesn't work that way. The wound needs to be healed directly, not through proxies. So we started the work. I asked Camila to do something difficult. I asked her to be alone for 6 months, without looking for a relationship, without dating apps, without seeking male validation, and to use this time to relate to herself. She resisted. She said, "I can't be alone. I feel empty." I said, "Exactly. And that's why you fill this emptiness with men who don't deserve you. You need to learn to fill this emptiness yourself, because as long as you need someone external to make you feel whole, you're going to attract people who will exploit that need." She agreed. But it was one of the most difficult periods of her life. The first few weeks were brutal. She felt constant anxiety, restlessness, as if something was missing. But I guided her through it. Every time she felt the impulse to seek external validation, I asked her to sit with the sensation, not run from it, not fill it, just sit, breathe, observe, and ask, "What is this sensation trying to show me?" Alan Watts teaches us that loneliness is an illusion. You're never alone. You're always with yourself. The problem is you've spent so much time running from yourself that when you finally stop, the presence of who you really are seems strange, even scary. But when you go through that discomfort, when you learn to sit with your own company without needing distractions, you discover something revolutionary. You are enough, alone, complete, whole. Camila spent 6 months in deep introspection. She did therapy, she meditated, she journaled, she worked on her wounds, and something started to change. She began to feel different, more centered, more whole, less needy. And when the 6 months ended, I said, "Now you can return to the world of relationships, but you'll notice something different. You're not going to feel attracted to the same types of men anymore." And that's exactly what happened. 3 months later, she met someone. But it was different. He was available. He was consistent. He treated her well. And her first reaction was, "This is strange. I'm not feeling that intensity, that anxiety, that emotional roller coaster." I said, "Exactly, because what you used to call passion was actually anxiety. You were addicted to drama. But now you're healed enough to recognize what healthy love is. And healthy love isn't intense. It's calm. It's safe. It's consistent." Carl Jung would say that Camila integrated her shadow. She brought the unconscious pattern to light, looked at it, understood where it came from, and consciously chose not to operate from it anymore. And when you do that, when you bring the unconscious to consciousness, you stop being a puppet of your patterns. You become free. Today, Camila has been in a healthy relationship for 2 years. And she recently told me, "I didn't know love could be like this. Calm, safe, without drama. I thought drama was synonymous with passion, but it was just unhealed trauma repeating itself." Third case. Philip. Philip was 53 years old. He was an executive at a multinational corporation. He earned well. He had a family, but he was empty, profoundly empty. He woke up every day and went to work, but it was mechanical. He didn't feel purpose. He didn't feel joy. He was just existing, and this was killing him inside. When he came to me, he said, "I have everything society says I should want, but I feel dead. What's wrong with me?" Jordan Peterson would help us understand Philip. He was living a life that wasn't his. He chose a career for the money, for the status, for approval, not because it was what his soul wanted. And now, decades later, the bill arrived. Because you can deceive the mind. You can deceive the people around you, but you can't deceive the soul. And Philip's soul was screaming, "This isn't you. This never was you." And the more he ignored this scream, the more he felt the emptiness. I asked Philip, "If money wasn't an issue, what would you do?" He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I always wanted to be a teacher. I love teaching, but that doesn't pay the bills." I said, "So you traded your soul for paid bills, and now you're paying a much higher price." He didn't like hearing that, but it was true. And sometimes the truth hurts before it liberates. I didn't tell Philip to quit everything and become a teacher immediately. That would be irresponsible. But I said, start small. Find ways to integrate what you love into your current life. Give volunteer classes on weekends. Mentor young professionals. Write about what you know. Reconnect with this part of you that was suppressed. Because as long as you continue suffocating your essence, you'll continue feeling dead. Philip started slowly. Every Saturday morning, he gave free English classes to young people from underserved communities. At first, he found it strange. He was used to corporate meetings, PowerPoints, numbers. But there, in that improvised classroom, seeing the young people's eyes shine when they understood something, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Joy. Genuine joy. Not the forced joy of a corporate happy hour, but the deep joy of being aligned with purpose. Alan Watts would say, Philip was rediscovering what it means to be alive, because being alive isn't having a beating heart. It's feeling that what you do matters. It's feeling that you're contributing. It's feeling that you're expressing who you really are. And when you do that, when you reconnect with your essence, life stops being a burden and becomes a dance. 2 years later, Philip made a complete transition. He left the multinational and opened an educational project. He earns less, but he wakes up happy. He goes to sleep in peace, and he told me something beautiful. I lived 53 years, but I only really started living in the last 2, because now I'm me. Not the version people expected, not the version that pays well, but the true version. And this version is priceless. These 3 cases have something in common. Robert, Camila, and Philip were all trapped in frequencies that weren't theirs. Robert, in desperation. Camila in neediness. Philip in emptiness. And while they operated from these frequencies, life continued reflecting these frequencies back. But when they had the courage to stop, look inside, take responsibility, and do the work of retuning, everything changed. Not because the universe decided to be kind to them, but because they changed the signal they were transmitting. And now I ask you, what frequency are you transmitting? What version of you is operating in the world? Is it the true version? Or is it the version you built to survive, to be accepted, to not be rejected? Because as long as you operate from the false version, you'll continue attracting results that don't satisfy you. But when you have the courage to be the true version, when you stop pretending, compensating, hiding, the universe can finally deliver what is truly yours. And now, we're arriving at the moment you've been waiting for. The complete protocol. The killer exercise. In the next few minutes, I'm going to give you a tool that integrates everything you've learned here. A tool you can use every day. A tool that will reprogram your vibrational frequency at the deepest level. Stay with me. This is the gift I prepared for you. We've reached the final moment. You've learned the diagnosis. You've understood the mechanics. You've seen real cases. Now you're going to receive the tool. And I want you to understand that this isn't just another technique. This is a tested, refined protocol, applied to hundreds of people with consistent results. If you apply this correctly, every day, for 30 days, your life will change. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making empty promises. I'm giving you a key, but you need to have the courage to use it. The protocol is called Quantum Resignification, and it works in 5 steps. Each step is important. You can't skip any. because they work in synergy. One prepares the ground for the next. And in the end, you'll have done a complete reprogramming of your vibrational frequency. Step 1. Anchoring in the present. Before anything else, you need to get out of automatic mode. And for that, you're going to use breathing. But not just any breathing. You're going to use what I call conscious triangular breathing. It works like this. Inhale through your nose, counting to 4. Hold the air, counting to 4. Exhale through your mouth, counting to 4. Then hold without air, counting to 4. And repeat. Do this for 3 minutes. What does this do? It takes you out of the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight mode, and puts you in the parasympathetic, which is rest and regeneration mode. And when you're in the parasympathetic, your brain becomes more receptive, your defenses lower, and you can access deeper layers of consciousness. Carl Rogers would remind us that you can't transform what you're resisting, and when you're tense, you're resisting. So the first step is always to relax. Let go. Allow. Breathing is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. It's the oldest and most powerful tool you have. Use it. Step 2. Identification of current frequency. Now that you're anchored, you're going to do an honest scan. You're going to ask yourself, what emotion is dominating my life right now? Not the emotion you'd like to be feeling, not the emotion you think you should be feeling, but the emotion that's really there. Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it resentment? Is it emptiness? Be honest. Brutally honest, because you can't change what you don't admit. Name the emotion, and then locate where in your body you're feeling it. In your chest, in your throat, in your stomach, in your back. Locate it. Carl Jung teaches us that naming things is giving power over things. When you name the emotion, you take it out of the unconscious and bring it to consciousness. And when it's in consciousness, you can work with it. Before that, it was controlling you. Now, you're observing it. And observation changes everything. Step 3. Recognition without judgment. Now comes the part most people get wrong. They identify the emotion and immediately try to suppress it, fix it, or get rid of it. Don't do that. Instead, speak directly to the emotion, out loud if possible, or mentally if you're not alone. Say something like this: I see you, fear. I recognize that you're here, and I understand that you're trying to protect me. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but now I choose something different. You can stay, but you're not going to drive my life anymore. Alan Watts would teach us that resisting the emotion is feeding the emotion. But when you recognize the emotion without judgment, when you treat it like a scared child who just wants to be seen, something magical happens. The emotion relaxes, because it doesn't need to scream to be heard anymore. You've already heard it, and now it can calm down. Step 4. Activation of desired frequency. Now comes the most important part. You're going to consciously choose the frequency you want to operate in. And you're going to activate this frequency through a combination of visualization, emotion, and word. Here's how to do it. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And imagine a version of you operating at the frequency you desire. If you want to operate in gratitude, imagine yourself waking up in gratitude. See yourself moving through the day with gratitude. See yourself interacting with people from a place of gratitude. Don't imagine vaguely. Imagine with details. See the colors, hear the sounds, feel the sensations, and while you imagine, allow the emotion to arise. Don't force it, but invite it. Invite gratitude to enter your chest, and when you feel it, even if it's just a little bit, amplify it. Breathe into it. Expand it. Let it fill your entire body. And now, while you're in this frequency, you're going to use the power of the word. And here's the mantra I created specifically for this protocol. You're going to repeat out loud or mentally, with intention, with conviction, with emotion. I am the frequency I choose. I vibrate in love, gratitude, and power. I collapse possibilities aligned with my essence. I am free. Repeat this 10 times. Each time with more conviction. Each time feeling more emotion. Because remember, the universe doesn't respond to words. The universe responds to the emotional frequency behind the words. So don't be mechanical. Be visceral. Jordan Peterson would tell us that words have power. Words create worlds. When you speak something with conviction, with emotion, you're literally shaping the quantum field around you. You're sending a clear signal to the universe about who you are and what you want to attract. So choose your words carefully and speak them with power. Step 5. Anchoring in action. The last step is crucial because you can do this entire protocol, feel the elevated frequency, but if you don't anchor this in concrete action, it will dissipate. So, immediately after the protocol, you're going to ask a question. What's the smallest action I can take today that's aligned with this new frequency? Not a giant action, not a radical change, but a small action. If you activated gratitude, maybe the action is sending a message to someone thanking them. If you activated courage, maybe it's making that call you've been postponing. If you activated self-love, maybe it's saying no to something you'd normally say yes to out of obligation. The action doesn't need to be big, but it needs to be real, because action concretizes intention. And when you concretize, you send a signal to the universe that you're serious. Alan Watts would remind us that spirituality without action is fantasy. You can meditate, visualize, affirm all day. But if you don't act differently, nothing changes. Transformation happens at the intersection between consciousness and action. So act, even if small, but act. This is the complete protocol. 5 steps. Conscious breathing. Frequency identification. Recognition without judgment. Activation of desired frequency through visualization, emotion, and mantra. Anchoring in action. Do this every day. In the morning, preferably. Before grabbing your phone, before entering automatic mode, 10 minutes. That's all you need. 10 minutes to reprogram your frequency. 10 minutes to leave the prison. 10 minutes to become who you really are. And I promise you, if you do this religiously for 30 days, you won't recognize your life because you'll have changed the signal you're transmitting. And when you change the signal, the universe changes the response. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. But now you have the tools to make the unconscious conscious. Now you have the power to stop being directed and start directing. Now you're no longer a victim. You're a creator." And I want to end with one last invitation, because this work you're doing isn't selfish. It's the opposite. When you free yourself, you free everyone around you. When you elevate your frequency, you pull the collective field upward. When you break generational patterns, you heal not just yourself, but your ancestors and your descendants. So I invite you, don't do this just for you. Do it for everyone you love. Do it for everyone you're going to inspire. Do it because the world needs more people operating at elevated frequencies. The world needs more people who chose to leave the prison and became beacons. And when you do this, when you apply, when you transform, I invite you to share, not to brag, but to inspire. Because transformation is contagious, and the more people operating at elevated frequencies, the easier it becomes for everyone. We're all connected. We're all waves in the same ocean. And when one wave rises, it makes it easier for other waves to rise too. So this is my final invitation. Apply, transform, share. Because you didn't come here by chance. You were drawn to this information because something in you was ready, was crying out for liberation, and now you have everything you need. Now there are no more excuses. Now there's only choice. Do you choose to continue in the prison, or do you choose to use the key I just gave you? I know which one you'll choose, because you wouldn't have made it this far if you weren't ready. So go, apply, and I'll see you on the other side. on the side of freedom, on the side of elevated frequency, on the side of the life you always knew was possible. I believe in you. The universe believes in you. Now you just need to believe in you. And when you believe, when you act, when you become the frequency you choose, your life will never be the same, because you'll have broken the vibrational prison. And once you break it, you never go back, because on the other side is freedom. And freedom is addictive. Thank you for being here with me in the quantum carriage. Thank you for having the courage to do this work. And thank you for becoming a beacon for others. The world needs you shining, so shine. Without fear, without excuses, without limits. You are frequency. You are power. You are free. I am the quantum architect. And until our next encounter, keep building the reality you deserve.